You could cut him out, fire him, purge the toxin. But the company wouldn't survive. So instead, they adapted. And in time, they fused. There were 5 of them at the beginning. 5 desks, 5 minds. One long table with cables snaking through the wood like nerves. No funding rounds, no board, just shared conviction, and the silence that came with mutual respect. The company was built to make something beautiful. Not disruptive, not scalable, beautiful. A publishing platform that prioritized dignity, clarity, and depth. No ads, no algorithms. Just carefully curated voices in a sea of digital static. The founder, known internally as E, had designed the culture like a garden. People weren't just hired, they were invited. Meetings began on time and ended when people ran out of things worth saying. No one raised their voice. No one had to. They called it a monastery with Wi-Fi. They called it arrogant, idealistic, but it worked for a while. The breach didn't come from without. It came in a lanyard and dark jeans. His name was Reese. He wasn't hired. He was needed. The back end of the platform was collapsing. A string of anonymous attacks had corrupted the code base. Submissions vanished. Author portals broke mid-session. Content editors sobbed into keyboards while articles evaporated. 3 freelancers quit. E watched the platform bleed and picked up the phone. The consultant who arrived didn't smile, didn't make eye contact. He opened his laptop and diagnosed the breach in 30 minutes. This was amateur hour, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You're lucky your servers weren't salted and set on fire. Then he took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and went to work. At first, E thought it was nerves. A few offhand remarks. He told himself, he's here to help. This isn't permanent. Then came the sneer during the staff briefing. The mocking impression of Samir's accent. The time he called Yuki's emotional intelligence a coping mechanism for actual talent. E called Reese into his office. I built this place with a few principles. One of them is respect. Reese tilted his head like a dog hearing static. I'm not asking you to change. E continued, just to recognize the climate here. People do their best work when they feel safe. Reese smiled. I'm not here to feel safe. I'm here to keep your company alive. Within a week, the platform stabilized. Within 2, new features were live. Old contributors returned. So did readers. And yet, Yuki stopped coming into the office. Samir muted himself in meetings. Others became careful, calculating, quiet. Reese made things work, but something else had broken. E saw it and said nothing. Because for the first time in months, the site was breathing again. Part 2. The adaptation. There was no formal decision to keep him. No all-hands meeting, no vote, no speech about compromise. He was just still there, a presence, like bad weather. Reese had claimed the small room behind the kitchen, originally meant for meditation or quiet calls, and turned it into his own personal command center. LED monitors flickered around him like stained glass. Empty Red Bull cans formed a kind of aluminum shrine in the corner. The team started calling it the spear room. Never to his face, only in whispers, because there was no real way to fight him. He didn't break rules. He bent tone, warped mood. He wouldn't insult you directly. He'd just ask if your job was still necessary. He wouldn't interrupt. He'd wait for you to finish, then repeat your point with subtle mockery and a better metaphor. And somehow, he always delivered. Faster load times, fewer bugs, better SEO. Even the angry emails slowed to a trickle. E watched the metrics rise and the culture wilt. He walked the halls like a gardener in drought, watering dry roots with smiles and encouragement, but nothing bloomed like before. The first adaptation was physical. Desks shifted, rooms were rezoned, the long table was split into workstations. Collaboration happened via task boards, not conversation. Next came the emotional adaptations. Yuki stopped explaining herself. Samir began writing notes instead of speaking. New hires were brought in, not for brilliance, but for insulation. People who could smile politely under fire and still hit deadlines. Eventually, even Reese seemed less jarring. Not better. Just expected, like a cracked tile you step over without thinking. One day, a new intern named Lex wandered into the spear room, confused. Reese glanced up, eyes sharp. "This is mine," he said. Lex blinked. "I thought it was a quiet room." "It was. Now it works." Lex backed out. Later, he told E what had happened. He expected outrage, action. E just nodded gently, as if he'd already heard it all before. Lex stared at him. Why is he still here? The CEO looked down at his mug. Steam spiraled into the light. "Because he's part of the system now," he said. Then, softer, "We couldn't build what we've built without him." Lex said nothing more, but something changed in his posture. That night, E stayed late. He walked the empty office, now divided into small glowing pockets. The floor was quiet, no laughter, no music, just soft typing, muted calls, and the occasional mechanical hum from the spear room. He sat at the original long table, now reduced to storage, and ran his fingers across a deep scratch where Samir once carved a joke with his pen. It had been crude. They had all laughed, even E. Now the groove felt like an artifact. He closed his eyes. This wasn't defeat. It was survival. Part 3. The Fusion. The company didn't rise like a phoenix. There was no press blitz, no viral launch, no TED Talk, just slow, steady traction. They added a paywall, then removed it, introduced audio versions, then scrapped the narrator AI in favor of real human readers. E didn't lead from the front anymore. He led from the middle, like a ligament. The team was smaller now, but tighter. They delivered. On time, with fewer meetings, less chatter. It wasn't joy exactly, but it was something like peace. Reese never left. He didn't promote himself. He didn't need to. Everything now depended on systems he'd written, protocols he'd embedded. He wasn't the heart of the company, but he was the spine. Sometimes he said something shocking, just to watch faces shift. But fewer faces shifted now. People adjusted. They absorbed the blow, redistributed the force. The newcomers didn't know the difference. To them, it was just how things were here. There was no before Reese, no monastic table, only a streamlined machine with a few jagged edges. They admired E, respected him. They called him principled, even gentle. They didn't know about the meetings he ended early to keep from snapping. They didn't know about the resignation letter he wrote, but never sent. They didn't know about the dream he once had. 5 desks, 1 voice, shared breath. Now, there were 27 desks, and breathing space was optional. One afternoon, during a campus visit from a neighboring startup, a bright-eyed visitor gestured toward the glass-walled spear room. "Who's that?" they asked. E followed the finger. Inside, Reese was on a call, animated, alone. He laughed at something no one else could hear. "That," E said slowly, "is someone who nearly destroyed us." The visitor looked startled. Then why's he still here? E took a long pause. He could feel the old ache, the one he'd learned not to flinch at. Because we grew around him, he said. We didn't choose the wound, but we chose what came after. That night, the last to leave, E stood before the old table in storage. It had been sanded down. The scratch from Samur's pen was gone. He ran his palm across the surface, smooth, neutral. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a pen. He carved one word into the edge. Fused. Not to forget, but to remember what healing sometimes looks like. Not perfection, not restoration, but peace, grown slowly around the spear.